Hey there YouTube, let's talk about player collecting. Now this is a little video that I wanted to put together a little while ago, so I got inspired recently. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about player collecting, kind of why I do it, what it is I like about it, and then I'm going to use some examples and kind of a couple of collections that I'm starting up. So part of the reason I can say that I've been at this kind of thing for a while, so I brought this just as a kind of an illustration. So this is for one of the collections I have. I've got a couple of these binders here, and this one is specifically for my Mike Modano collection. So I'm gonna lift it up a little bit, hoisted. So there's one of the big 8x10 cards, and then there's a bunch of these things like beehive cards and a lot of different things. I reached a certain point with this collection. I'm going to use this. I'm going to cite the example because I learned a lot of little things of it. The reason why I wanted to make this little mini video series is because I learned a lot of lessons building that collection, and it's still ongoing. It hasn't finished, but it's gone through various stages. I've actually been collecting Mike Modano cards. That's the longest running player collection I have. I've been collecting it basically since the mid-90s. So at this point, I've been collecting it getting close to 25 years. That's kind of frightening. But the point is that it's gone through different iterations. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the point that I'm trying to get at is that even inside of a collection, when you start doing it, even if you've been doing it for a long time, there's evolutions in the way that your collecting goes. It doesn't always start off a certain way and then just stay that way forever. Sometimes you start off a certain way with a certain idea and then change your mind as you go along. You'll have to forgive the train because I lived close to a station, so you're going to hear a couple of those. Anyway, that's going to lead me to the first rule of player collecting. And it's actually the only rule I have as far as player collecting is concerned. And that rule is, there are no rules to player collecting. The reason I can say that is not just as a cop-out to get me out of giving any other rules, but the fact is, when you are doing player collecting, it's a little different than a lot of other forms of collecting that there are. And I'll use this example over here. So it's another binder I have here. And this one is just kind of a set that I'm still just starting and working on. So this is the 2018, hopefully you can see it with the glare. That's a 2018 Topps Chrome UFC set. Now the thing is, I really like that set. I opened up a couple boxes of it and I decided I wanted to put together the set. The base set, I might just end up buying the base set though, because it is a bit of a pain to put together. But I also wanted to do a set of the refractors. So there's 100 cards in the set, and then there's 100 cards in the refractor parallel set as well. So when you're looking at it from a set collecting standpoint, the difference between set collecting versus like a player collection, which is what I'll mostly be talking about, the difference is there's 100 cards in the set and 100 cards in the parallel set. There are some variations that you can collect as well if you really want to, and then there's also an autograph set, which I am going to collect, but I'm not counting that as part of it. But it means in order to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish there, without worrying about the variations, which I can either choose to ignore or choose to include, I'm collecting 200 cards. In order for those sets to be complete, I need 200 cards. So it's fairly straightforward, it's fairly linear. You know, if you're collecting a set and you expect the set to be complete in the conventional way without variations or any other little wrinkles you can throw in there, you know that that's how many cards you're going to need in order for that collection to be complete. When you're collecting a team, it's similar, but you also have a lot more flexibility because you don't have a set number. You can figure out and build a checklist and figure out, you know, if I'm collecting a Green Bay Packers team set, I can do all the base cards. I can do all the cards that have memorabilia on them. I can do all the cards for the current team. I can do all the cards that only show them in the home uniform. I can basically break it down and, you know, shrink the list in any way I want. And there's really nobody that can tell you you're wrong. It's your collection, and at the end of the day, it's really what is it that you want that's going to make you happy. And that's the most important lesson. So while I said there's only one rule, I do have some suggestions. And my first suggestion is that if you are planning on building a player collection, you haven't done it already, it's an awesome way to do it, because like that team collection I just described, the player collection takes that one step further, because all you're really doing is collecting for one player. And again, you can decide how you want to do that. You can go all the way and try to get every single card. If you're collecting a modern player, I wish you the best of luck. I can tell you that when I initially started collecting Modano cards, I tried to do that, and I really genuinely wanted to. I knew that I couldn't afford some of the cards, but I hoped that in time I would be able to get my hands on them. But then as I started my collecting journey with that player, they started creating the one-of-one card. The problem with the one-of-one card is that it became the most exclusive card. The issue is that as soon as somebody else has a one-of-one card that you don't have, you can never be complete. And vice versa. If I have a one-of-one card, it doesn't matter if this other collector has the deepest pockets in the world. The only way they're going to be complete is if they somehow get all the one-of-ones and somehow convince me to give away mine, or sell it, or do whatever. The only alternative is to do it Highlander style. Legally speaking, I wouldn't advise it, but that is another possibility, and it's a bit time-consuming if you want to go that route. The point is that you can Try your best to get as many of them as possible. That's a goal too. You can just try to build as many of them as possible, knowing that you'll never be complete. That was never very satisfying for me. Once the 1-of-1 was introduced, I kind of knew that was the end of the dream of actually having a complete set. So then it moved me to adjusting myself accordingly. I started focusing a little bit more on the memorabilia cards, the jersey cards. But as I said, the journey takes you through different paths. And I can tell you that I've got a box. So this binder just contains like base cards and parallels and some, lower level inserts. I've got a box with top loaders in it that have some of these jersey cards that I used to buy on eBay for, $5, $10 a pop. The thing is, I can tell you, I've genuinely got probably 150, 200 of them. I would probably just fire sale them for $5 or $10 a piece if I could. The truth is, when you start lowering the bar, is what I would call it, is that if you give up on the idea of trying to collect everything, so I'll try to explain this as best I can. If you give up on the idea of trying to collect everything, and you don't do the exercise that I said where you try as soon as possible, you may not know at the very beginning exactly what you want to do. But the sooner you can figure out what your niche within the collection that you're trying to build is, whatever collection is going to make you happy, the sooner you can figure out what that is, it saves you a lot of time and a lot of money. Because in the end result is I had a couple of 100 jersey cards of the player that I was collecting, and they were part of the collection, and they still are today. So at this point, I think I did a rough count, and I probably have about 1,100 Mike Modano cards, and there are about 5,000 out there. And I know for a fact I could go and balloon this number very quickly. I could ramp it up without spending too much money at this point. I could actually ramp it up and get to 2,000, 3,000, maybe even 4,000 without too much of a problem. The last 1,000 would be a lot more expensive than the first 4, but at the same time, I wouldn't be satisfied with that just because I'd be picking up a lot of cards that I don't care about that much. Most of those couple of 100 jersey cards that are pretty generic basically just sit in that box, not necessarily gathering dust, but effectively gathering dust. That's not really a lot of fun to me. That's why at a certain point, I went from initially trying to collect everything to then trying to collect memorabilia cards, to then really narrowing the scope even more to saying I wanted to get autographed memorabilia cards or autographed cards of Modano, certified autographs with Mike Modano's signature on them. That narrowed the scope a lot more. All of a sudden, I was drawing from a much smaller pool of cards, and I could pick up the ones that really interested me. So I recently passed 100 of those, and that was a very satisfying milestone. But again, taking the big list and making it into this more narrow set of goals is really kind of fun. And that would be my second suggestion to you. So if you manage to figure out what specifically piece of the collecting puzzle you want to collect, the next best part is to take that, and you're still collecting whatever you decided in that first part, but then you can create little mini challenges for yourself. So if you think of this kind of collection as a marathon, it's creating that, marker 100 meters or 100 yards down the line. So instead of worrying about getting to mile 26, I think that's how many miles are on a marathon. I've never run one, so I have no idea. But instead of focusing on mile 24 or 25 or 26 at the very beginning of the race, you're just looking 100 meters or 100 yards down there. That's your first checkpoint. That's your little goal. Well, for collecting, that can be picking up, trying to put together a rainbow from a certain set. You go and get, maybe there's, I can use Topps Finest as an example. So maybe you get the base card, and you get the refractor, and maybe there's an X-Fractor or some kind of a nice parallel. So maybe there's 3 or 4 of them. But then you try to complete that, and then you've got yourself a little mini set inside the set. So for me, once I started narrowing my scope down, I was able to focus on those little mini sets along the way of sets that interest me, designs that I liked, and cards that I thought were cool. I could focus in on those, and at the same time be collecting my autographs. That's how the player collection evolved, so that now I'm putting together a collection that I'm really proud of, that I'm very happy about. I still have the cards I had before. A lot of these cards still sit in the binder. I added a handful of them from this past week's mail days, but I'm not really filling these binders anymore. I'm really focusing in on quality over quantity for that collection, and that's what I decided to do for that. That's where the difference is. That's basically the lesson that I learned from this particular collection. And there are other collections that I built in the same way. Some of the newer ones, though, I basically start right at the beginning saying, this is the kind of cards that I want to get for this collection, and that's what I'm going to go after. And then once you go, from then, if you go to card shows, you look on eBay, or you make trades with people, whatever it is you do to get cards, it becomes a lot easier because then all of a sudden you know exactly what you want. And if you see something cool that falls in, remember what I said about rule number 1. If you really want it and you can afford it, go get it. Just because it falls maybe outside of what you were thinking about, it doesn't mean you can't get it. And I'll talk about that a little bit. So now that you kind of have an idea what I learned from trying to collect this player for so long, I am starting, well, not starting completely because I've started a little bit, but I'm at the early stages of 2 more player collections that I'm going to add. And I've referenced them already a little bit, so I'm going to talk about them right now. So one of them is going to be Carlos Delgado. So I'm focusing in on a couple of Blue Jay guys here. But they're on two opposite ends of the spectrum. So Carlos Delgado was a longtime Blue Jay who became kind of a Blue Jay legend around here. And he kind of bridged the gap between the World Series and the competitive era and then the modern era that this next player will represent. But the thing about Delgado, and the reason why I say these two players are complete polar opposites, is that Delgado's career is over. It's already established. To me, I think it's a Hall of Fame caliber career, but that'll be up to the Veterans Committee to decide, not for me. But from my perspective, he falls into that category. But because he didn't make enough votes to stay on the ballot, he kind of fell by the wayside as a guy who had a great career, some very good numbers. His career ended a little bit early because of injury, and he was kind of penalized for that. But then at the same time, to me, he's kind of an undervalued guy. So I've got cards like this, where that's a minor league card, and then this one here is also a minor league card, so from Classic Best. So as I said, this collection started off with me focusing right away on specifically, certified autographs. See if I got that to focus. There you go. Certified autographs of the player. But then I also at the same time would pick up, I built the beginnings of this collection basically by accumulation. So there's the 92 Bowman rookie card. This one is a cool one. I like this one. I didn't actually realize this was a limited one, but as you go along in your collecting journey, collecting a player, you're actually going to find that it's a great way of building like a typeset of different sets, maybe series that you didn't look at originally, and you get to learn more about them. So this is one of the buybacks here, to show off one or two more cards here, and then I'll talk about the other player. The cool thing about the buybacks is you get these basically certificates that match the sticker on them, and then here's another buyback as well. So you can actually build a nice little representative set of different parts of the player's career, basically from beginning, middle to end, especially if a player's already been out there for a while. And then even after they retire, there are more cards that can come out. But like I said before, you can choose to collect those or not. You can basically focus just on the ones during the player's playing career. With Delgado, I started off, like I said, collecting autographs. So that was number one. So that's kind of how I started accumulating those. But then I said, for me, it'd be kind of fun. Delgado also has about 5,000 cards. So Modano and Delgado are very similar in that way. With Delgado, I think I'm going to try to pursue a little bit more. I'm not going to try to get them all, because the one-of-one issue is still an issue. But I think with that collection, I'm going to try to see how many I can get, which means I am going to focus in on some of those base cards, because they're not super expensive, and I can probably get them in bulk. And when I go through this series, I'll have other episodes where I'll talk about stuff like that, and there'll be some updates. Generally speaking, though, these episodes will not be focused just on updating these player collections, because that's what I've got pickup videos for. I've even got a playlist on the channel. I'll try to put it in the eye there. I've got pickup videos going back years now, or well, months for sports cards and pickup videos for other things going back years. The point is that as I go along, that's always been my way of tracking. But when it comes to a player like this, Delgado is a perfect candidate for what I said earlier. So even though I'm trying to accumulate as many of them as possible, and I'll track the progress as I go along. So I can tell you right now, between those ones that I just had in that little pile, and then I've got this little Profolio. This is actually made for collectible card games, like, Pokemon or Magic the Gathering or whatever. It's just one-sided. I don't know if you can see that well. There you go. But I'm using it just to put the base card. But in this case, I've got refractors and stuff in here. That's kind of cool. I'll do a showcase on that at some point. But the point is that for Delgado, even though I just relatively started, I had been working on chipping away at accumulating Delgado cards for a little while. So what I'm actually starting with on this is about just under 60 Delgado cards is what I'm starting off with. So between the pile and then what's in that little binder, I've got about 60 of them. So there are about 5,000 of them out there. I'll put the real numbers on the screen just so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. So it's actually a decent little start. It's like a little cool starter pack with some nice cards in there, a little bit of quality and a little bit of quantity. So that's a starting point on that. So that'll be a little bit more broad because I am going to collect a bunch of different things. My original thought was just to stick to Blue Jay players only. So I'm giving you my thought process as I'm doing this. My original thought was just to stick with Blue Jay players, but then I thought, if I'm going to try to get as many as I can, I'm probably going to buy like a bulk lot. And I'll talk about that in a upcoming episode. But if I buy a bulk lot, I'm also going to get some New York Mets cards, and I'm probably going to get some Florida Marlins cards. And I'm not going to throw them out. So there's no reason why I shouldn't just include them, especially if there's some interesting cards in there. So I just decided whatever's in the Delgado, checklist is fair game. Whatever I can get my hands on. If I can get my hands on a one-on-one, awesome. If I can get my hands on a cool memorabilia card or an autograph card, awesome. I'm not going to be picky. I'm not going to overspend, but I'm not going to be picky. So that's the approach with the Delgado collection. With the other player that I'm going to collect, I'm going to take a different tact, and I'm going to explain why. So for this one, I'm actually looking at a player at the opposite end of the spectrum. So instead of a player who's been established, who already has a completed career, we know exactly what Carlos Delgado did in his career. But whatever hobby love he has right now is based on his standing today. If he ever does make it to the Hall of Fame, though, I wouldn't be surprised if some of those cards start going up in value. But for now, they are where they are. So the opposite end of the spectrum is this guy. Another Blue Jay, but Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So with Vladdy Jr., it gets kind of interesting. So I've got a couple of his cards here. I'll show you a couple of them here. So that's the Bowman Platinum. And then this one, I like these ones. This is the Bowman Best. So this is 2018 Bowman Best. That's a cool card, but then I've got the refractor version as well. Hopefully with the light you can kind of make out. I think they could have done a little better job with the refractoring on this one, but it looks pretty cool. And then we've got some 2019 ones. So we've got the Bowmans, you know, the camo version and the regular version. So that's pretty cool. Chrome version. Got that. So with this one, and then there's an unlicensed rookie card from Optic. And then this one is probably my favorite one right now, based on the early part of this collection. The Stadium Club one has got a nice picture and everything. So with Vladdy Jr., completely different approach. So with Vladdy Jr. right now, my collection is exactly what's in my hand. 12 cards, including a couple of rookie cards, including, you got the Topps Chrome rookie card as well. Got that. And then the collection actually started with this one. The first card I picked up was actually a Topps Now. That was to commemorate his walk-off hit, his first career hit setting up a walk-off win in MLB debut. Now this card is actually, I think still right now, the highest quantity printed for a Topps Now card, because the Topps Now cards are only available basically for one day. So you basically order and then you get them. So I actually have 5 of these. What I'm going to do with them yet, I'm not sure. But I'll probably get a couple of them graded just to see, and then I may trade a couple of them off or sell them, and we'll see how that goes. But for now, I picked up 5 just so that I could have some choices. The rest of these are right now singles. I am going to get some duplicates on a couple of the rookie cards. Again, I'll figure out what I'm going to do. Part of that was me just not paying attention when I ordered a couple of them. I ended up winning a few more than I thought I would, but that's okay. As I go along in this series, I'll kind of update you on exactly what I'm going with. But with this one, I'm not going to try to collect every single card. It's not feasible to me, because already at this point, Vladdy Jr., even though this is his first full season, he's got a bunch of minor league issues and a bunch of pre-rookie cards. He's already got 15 or 1,600 cards. And a lot of them are really expensive because the hype train on the player is already pretty high. The Vladdy Jr. one is going to be a much more streamlined collection. My focus is going to be on some of the rookie cards, some of the pre-cards, you know, some of the minor league cards as well. But I'm going to be focusing predominantly on trying to get a copy of all the regular rookie cards and some of the parallels where I can here and there. I'll try to get my hands on a couple of the autograph issues, but the autograph ones are really where the price starts to skyrocket. So the approach is going to be completely different. Where the Delgado, I'm going to try to get volume. With the Vladdy Jr. collection, I'm going to try to kind of focus on quality over quantity. There's going to be a little quantity now in the early stage, because this is less a suggestion and more an observation. When you're first starting a player collection, you're probably going to be able to accumulate quite a number because you need them all, basically. You have to kind of resist the urge. That's why I said figuring out what your narrow scope is as soon as possible is beneficial. Because if you can figure that out early, then you're going to save a ton of money. Because otherwise you can just keep throwing money at the problem, hit a bunch of buy it nows on eBay, and that'll cost you a fortune. And that's fine. You're going to be able to build a collection really, really fast, but you're not really going to be able to enjoy it very much as it starts. And that's where starting a collection early and kind of having that plan at the beginning, even if the plan changes, it's always subject to change. That's a nice way of being able to give yourself something. Now the camera says the battery's about to run out. I've got a few more thoughts before I wrap up the video, but I will come back after the battery is recharged. All right, I'm back after giving the battery a little top up. I didn't want to wait for it to do a full recharge before I finished off. We're almost at the end of the video anyway. So bottom line, I'll quickly outline a couple of the points that I got as far as the overall videos, just so that you're with me. I'm going to be building 2 collections. The Delgado collection is going to be, as I said, going to be more broad. I'm going to be not narrowing it down to any specific thing, although as I go along I will have little checkpoints, little subsets that I'm going to be working on, maybe trying to get rainbow versions of some of the different ones. I'll talk more about it in kind of episode 2, what decisions I made on which cards I went after first. Because for the Delgado, I did have certain specific ideas of what I wanted to focus on. I did the autographs, which I already talked to you about a little bit, but I also went after, and I'll give you a little bit of a preview on that, is that I did kind of go after some of the finest and refractor cards and Bowman's Best and things like that, just because I really, really like those cards. So cards like that were more interesting to me. So I was being a little bit picky and choosy. I'll talk about more about that. For Vladimir Guerrero Jr., that collection, I've already started, and you can kind of get a grasp at it. A lot of it is focused on kind of on the prospect cards, and then the beginnings of getting some of the rookie cards have started to happen a little bit. And that is by design. But I'll explain more about the rationale about that in episode 2, because episode 2 is also going to be where I'm going to talk about, now that I've established that I'm going to be building these sets, And now you have a little bit of an idea of what we're going on here. I'm also I'm going to, in episode 2, show you exactly. I've given you a little preview, but I'm going to give you exactly what I've got for these 2 collections. And then I'm going to start showing what I'm adding into it. And this will be really the only time at the beginning where I explain that, because going forward, it's just going to be in the pickup videos. So it would be redundant to show it twice in 2 different videos on the same, basically the same topic. After that, any other episodes after episode 2 will just be if a certain specific subset or topic, or if there are any questions. So to that end, that's where I'm going to end episode 1. I just wanted to give you a little background on kind of what my background is in the, as far as player collecting is, why I like it. Bottom line, flexibility. That's really the biggest reason why, because you can control how much or how little you want to make it, how difficult you want to make it, or how easy you want to make it, how narrow or how broad the scope is going to be, and in terms of what cards you're going to be happy with. The overarching theme that I tried to convey throughout this whole video was that the sooner you become comfortable, or the better that you're able to tune into what you're interested in. And it doesn't hurt at the beginning to experiment a little bit and get different kinds of cards just to see what you like. But the sooner you figure out what that is, the easier it'll be to build the rest of it, because then you can build a collection that you'll be happy with and one you can enjoy for a long time, potentially for years to come. So I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, by all means, please feel free to leave them in there. And if you have any suggestions on any other topics related to this that you'd like me maybe to include in a future episode, I'd love to do that. Otherwise, the rest of the channel, things will be coming up. I will have a Sunday Randoms video tomorrow. So I'm recording this on Saturday night, so it'll be up on Saturday or early Sunday. But then there'll be a video on Sunday that hopefully will be up then as well. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next episode or the next video. Thanks very much.